Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SPRX where today we're listening to some tracks off of an album from an act named Aegror, titled Reign of Disease. And if we switch over to here, we have three tracks, Statesman of the Damned, as well as Rapist of Minds and Reign of Disease. Now apparently Aegror, if I'm not mistaken, is Latin for disease. So that's cool. We're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Statesman of the Damned, let's go. Immediately heavy. Get that art up on the screen there for you as well. I love how organic it is with the tremolo picking from those leads. Fantastic crunchy tone to those guitars there. Very unison between the leads and the kicks there. Fantastic use of dynamic range. That's great use of double time here. When blast speeds are tight.
Taste
I mean, I adore the visceral tone of the vocals. I think they suit the genre really well. Ah, cool, and we're allowing that to fade out. Nice. Well done. So that's a fantastic first impression to Aegror's work. Statesman of the Damned, track number 1 for today. What do we think it's about? I mean, I didn't get all the lyrics through clearly. There was a line at one point, I think, about there being an infection that we wanted, a betrayal or things being lost or something like that. So I'm kind of wondering if this is a song where maybe it's either addressing the Statesman of the Damned or it's accepting the conditions that they've put in place despite how terrible they are and the fact that we have been screwed over and betrayed by maybe those that we trust in. And maybe that is where the disease is coming from. Or maybe the disease is the fact that we had that trust in the first place. I'm not sure. But either way, I think with each of these little mini conclusions, I'm going to do a mini conclusion, one per track. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I like about them, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then we'll have an overall sort of conclusion at the end. But one of the things I appreciate about this track is the actual structure of it. So this is a 5-minute 41 track. And sure, you have your tremolo pitch guitars and your blast beats and your basses and your kind of like, again, like black metalish kind of post-black metalish vocal styles. They're kind of like this grisly kind of ghostly tone to it. It's harsh and brittle, but, fierce at the same time. You have those for some parts of the track. And there are some really beautiful sections as well between a mixture of half-time, normal, and double-time elements rhythmically, where we have these guitars sort of have a similar tone and they extend through the harmonies and put these minor triads forward. And it's actually really pleasant and pretty in a weird kind of way. But then there are other parts of the song, like a minute and a half in or something like that, like around a 2-minute mark, should I say, a 2-minute 30 mark, where you simply have things kind of stop and you have these like sort of subtle vocal lines, and then you have the guitars, etc. And then you have the maybe some like sort of cleaner single tone leads, reinforced lead melodies in the upper register. And it's just great to have the dynamic range there. It's a song where I feel like you could definitely have had the heavy guitars and bass and drums for a lot of it and continue to elaborate on the story. But instead, Aegror, what they've decided to do is provide a more interesting, diverse experience. And I think that having those different chapters is really important, especially in this day and age where we cannot take the listener's attention for granted. Diversity within context is good. I think as well, the drums. I really appreciated the quality of the drum performance and how they had a great sense of rhythmic unison with the guitars. I think that when the tremolo guitar parts and the double kicks there, it was nice that there was sort of an organic feel to it. I could tell that they were playing their instruments. It didn't sound robotic or like fixed in post. You could hear that it was a tight performance, and that they kind of went with each other, and that they just were like in sync with a sense of chemistry with the rest of the elements there, and I appreciate that as well. It's just great when musicians can play their instruments, and you can't take it for granted nowadays. It's almost like because of like the slight tempo changes between parts there, it's like the music is writhing as well, which I thought was kind of a cool effect. And we would effortlessly go between 30 seconds and then occasional triplet grooves with the kick, snare, and cymbal patterns. And then like maybe halftime or double time on the eighth or quarter accents. And it's just that variety there is really important too. It's not just the structure with different makeups of different instrumental layers, but we also had distinct individual instrumental parts for each. But finally, I think the final thing I want to mention about this track that I appreciate before we move on is the actual way that things have been mixed and mastered. I love the raw kind of intense tone to it. It's not polished or sterilized. It's got a kind of angst and again a grittiness to it, kind of like the vocal performance there. It's a very visceral sound that I think suits what we're kind of go for here. And when I look at the art of the album, I can kind of imagine the music that I'm hearing, and I appreciate that connection. The leveling, the EQing and everything like that is done well, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's unpolished, but it's more like it just sounds kind of heavy and untamed, and I appreciate that it's nice and low with that pump, but again, we do dynamic range and those other elements in post as well as composition that kind of makes music a bit more exciting and special and also commercial grade. But yeah, that was a fantastic start. We've got track number 4 now, Rapist of Minds. We also have lyrics for this one, I think. I would recommend, and it's not an obligatory thing, but if you are doing a vocal style where you might not hear all the words clearly, it can be good to include lyrics for all the tracks. And I'm pretty sure, did this have lyrics? No. So that first one didn't have lyrics, but this one did. Yeah, I appreciate that though. Thank you for that. I mean, the drums are phenomenal. Listen, like those different 8th and 16th and 32nd note grooves there. Mix-ups on the patterns. We're really fond of those lead techniques there. It's helping to tie the album together a bit, I think. And I'm sorry, I'll try not to pause too much. I just also appreciate how claustrophobic the mix is at the same time when it wants to be. The guitars remain similar, but the drums are adjusting. Oh boy. Brutal. Very cool and response with those leads in the upper register with the vocals. Going between the sus2 and minors there, I think, for the bar chords. How we're gonna... I was wondering how we were going to continue to build. It's guttural. Impressive sweep picking there. It's really clean, actually. Don't know if you can hear it. That's when it stopped for me. Rapist of Minds. Crazy. So, I mean, I think this one was a bit more straightforward even with the lyrics, or with or without the lyrics. I think this track is discussing someone who just basically abuses people's, fragile psychology, their minds, to kind of do whatever they want and manipulate them as they choose. Spreading that terror, being all-powerful, etc. Horrific stuff. Horrific stuff. I think that it's an interesting follow-on from Statesman of the Damned, where they are, I'd have to probably listen through the whole album to get the context, but individual chapters are nice. So one of the things that was kind of cool about this track was that guitar solo at the end. I don't think we'd had a dedicated guitar solo in the previous track, so to have something a little bit more kind of like, oh, I see we're going for the melodic kind of like alternate lead here, and then to go into that sweeping at the end there as a nice almost sort of rhythmic device there, that arpeggio being repeated was almost sort of therapeutic. It was like, oh, we're in a state of flux potentially. And I dig the feel of that, repeating the Rapist lines, the title twice in a row, and then having that kind of pan us out. I think is a smart move because it just sort of like lets you know, hey, we've kind of given the context we need here, enjoy more of an instrument that we might not have shown up until now in its full capacity. Because up until now, as far as I remember, the guitar has typically either been sort of like clean sort of power chord or strummed elements or finger-picked elements there, like in the clean parts, and then there's sort of like tremolo picked kind of rhythm parts or chords, and then you have like major or minor and such two bar chords and other ideas within this piece. I just like that the guitars were more fleshed out. I think in addition, I just think that the vocal performance in this was tops, in the sense that that helpless C-word one, I don't know if I can say it on YouTube, but the helpless, I'm really not sure if I can say that on YouTube, but like it's just really awesome. It's really cool just how we just like flagrant we were with it. The kind of attitude and sass behind it was dope. And it's just that specific line there. It's just so much of a sort of a slap in the face. It's just very kind of like kicks you in the teeth a little bit with how sort of like what it is, It's not there to be sort of like palatable or feasible. It's there to sort of provide the story it wants to, and you've got to respect it or leave. But I think being able to communicate like that with proper vocal technique is difficult. That kind of the shrieking or the yelling, the fry there is not an easy thing to do unless you know what you're doing. So to be able to carry that across a recording in a way which is tonally consistent throughout is fantastic. And I just think it was a fantastic additional bit of context for the piece there, whilst also allowing for other instruments such as the guitars and the drums to do a thing. Because I want to sort of talk a bit more about the drums for my final part with this track. There was one point where I was talking, and as I was talking, I heard some just monstrous 30-second note fills on the toms and the snares and the toms. But it was called the drum kit was thoroughly explored in this piece. The drummer is monstrous. They're phenomenal. Just how tight they were with a lot of those transfers was very, very impressive. And ultimately, I'm incredibly satisfied as a listener when I hear that people can not only play that well, but also know when to play less. So they have an understanding of the nuance and balance required within a piece in order to keep it compelling. Because if it's just if it's a 5-minute 21 drum solo, it might be a little bit tricky to kind of keep an equal or like a sense of curiosity about it. They did that here. There were similar structural adjustments, not to the same extent maybe, but like similar ones to what we had with Statesman of the Damned here. They know how to write their music and put things in place the way they need to. And now with this one, and we're really hearing some of these instruments flesh themselves out further to a point where it shows a phenomenal potential. I'm glad that I had a chance to review this one. No complaints about this one. It was a bit more straightforward to me than the previous one. It just could be because I have the lyrics, but either way, had a great time with it. But the final track for today is titled Reign of Disease, the self-titled off of the album, I think. Great use of toms here, doubles. Those toms into the double kicks was filthy. I feel like I need a cigarette after that. That was wild, dude. That was crazy playing on the double kicks. Those Gatling gun machine, that was a phenomenal. Well done. That was sick, dude. They just keep building within this album, don't they? I love the tempo changes though, the shifts between those feels, quote unquote, Great double tracking of the vocals here. It's filthy, dude. ferocious. Wonderful song. I'm incredibly impressed with this. This is Reign of Disease. Track number is not number 3 off the album. It is number 7. So listen to 1, 4, and 7. Reign of Disease. I think it's about the culminative efforts of the powers that be, the evil powers that be, to basically say, hey, you know, like, everyone will fall under my thumb. Whatever the one court decides will be my rule. And if you decide to go up against me, if you're silent about it, the person that the rapist of minds will be the one to corrupt you and destroy you and lead you into madness, effectively. Like, they become complete now. So I think that's across the album, it's the concept of something growing into a higher power and then just becoming demonstrable. You know, maybe it is the big guy over here, you know, on the throne. It's just visceral. So let's talk about this last one before we do an overall conclusion. Reign of Disease, part of what I think works so well is that they continue to pull new stuff out of their toolbox. Now, we've heard some fast drumming up until this point. But then when we went into like 30 seconds or triplet 30 seconds or something like that, in that chorus section with the snares side chaining, bum, bum, blah, blah, blah. It was just phenomenal. It was an incredible intensity and heavy level of heaviness there because of this snare sort of accents, but just there was this thunder to it, this immense kind of force, and it was just so ravishing. And I adore that we're trying to continue to build and add new things and keep, you know, like continue pushing the boundaries as we go throughout this album, because I don't think we'd had that fast before. And it's not even that we were going fast and that was the benefit of it. The drums was also able to sort of come down in sort of slower tempo parts with unpredictable tempos and sort of be able to match it regardless of where we were and what we got to. The general energy, the choice of different fills and, you know, like cymbal patterns was great. And having the toms at the start there just to kind of almost sort of cinematically build it up was fantastic as well. It's just great to have those mid elements maybe before you include the sort of cymbals to allow everything to come up with it. So yeah, the drums were phenomenal. I think as well, what was so cool about it is that you almost had chapters to it with those different tempo changes and parts of the song there. It was never predictable. It was never like, oh, I know we're going to have this satisfying little loop here and we're going to have that. No, this was a journey, an adventure. And each of the tracks we've heard so far today, Statesman, The Rapist of Minds, and Reign of Disease, they each have their own sort of attitude and personality. And I dig that part of what combines them, which we'll talk about at the end, is like the way that it's sort of the vocals are done. We'll talk about the vocals just about after this actually, because there was some like lower parts which I thought was a great addition. But just the way that the structure is unpredictable, yet the transitions are seamless, and the performance and the sort of chemistry alongside it is it's just phenomenal. It's one of the tightest performances I think I've heard in this genre across a lot of the music I reviewed, and I've listened to a lot of metal at this point, and I'm thankful for that. This is very, very good. But structurally, compositionally, very satisfying. I will note, as I mentioned, having the lower kind of growled vocals was just a nice sort of fragrant change from the upper register, because it was like we've had a lot of that kind of shriek and higher fry, and then to have it come in and harmonize on the low, and for them to simply have that, like, what was it? There was a line at the end there, "Our Father who art the plague" or something, be in that lower register is almost like a sermon being given by like a demon or something like that. I love that. I think it was just cool to have that variation with the expression, that extra bit of kind of heaviness in that low end. And yeah, honestly, they just continue to give you new stuff to listen to and to appreciate. I'm very thankful for it. Again, the feedback I've given on the individual tracks doesn't really give justice to the overall sort of like effort put into them, but we're going to try and talk about these tracks more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of the 3 tracks off of this album titled Reign of Disease, which are Statesman of the Damned, Rapist of Minds, and Reign of Disease, self-titled. Now, we've spoken about each of the tracks and their individual little mini conclusions, so if you want to sort of like confirm what I thought on various parts, you just want to check the timestamps in this upload. But, you know, first of all, what do we think this album is about? I think this album is about like the growth of like an entity that comes from the ether and eventually gets to a point where it controls everything, and it has like servants or extra, maybe other people, maybe even they can destroy minds, the rapist of the minds. They can distort and send them into madness, and how they'll control everything around the world, the movement of things. There's like infections and betrayals and stuff like that spoken about certain parts. So I think it is about like maybe illness or pandemics or something like that. It's just really interesting concept that I think is really well fleshed out across at least the 3 tracks that I've heard. There being 8 songs in here, this album being 46 minutes. There's a lot of really solid material so far. And so to quickly sort of follow on from what I think this album is about, one of the highlights for me personally of this album were the vocals. Now, I didn't get all the words clearly, like all the time, but when I did, they were fantastic. And even when they didn't, I liked the way that they sounded. I think for this style of music where it is just so extreme, you need that kind of fry, that kind of shriek, that kind of growl there, etc. And you often need it in that upper register to be able to be heard more clearly over top of the mid-range, the guitars, the basses, and then just the frenetic nature of the kicks and the extreme stuff going on with the percussion across, especially the last 2 tracks, including Reign of Disease. Just wild stuff. And so I think we were positioned well, we expressed ourselves well, our vocal technique seemed like we were solid with the head and chest voice there across the upper and lower ranges. It was typically the fry for most, if not all the time, either shrieks or growls. Fantastic work for the genre. There were also some interesting sort of quiet bits in certain tracks here where you kind of add a bit of almost like a Foley or kind of cinematic aesthetic to it, which I appreciate, but it was intense, it was full on, and from what I read of the lyrics, it's really interesting, compelling stories there as well. It's an interesting sort of tapestry we have woven there lyrically, and I have respect for that. The second thing I want to point out is the predominant relationship between the guitars and drums. The drums throughout this record are fantastic. We handle tempo changes with ease. We handle our double kicks like a boss. Like the especially with Reign of Disease, just the fluidity of those kicks, the way we get into 30 seconds and even triplets or something like that, is just incredible. We're very comfortable exploring the toms and snares and hi-hats and crashes and rides and etc., all the different parts of the kit, across the quarters, eighths, triplets, and 16th note grooves. But we also pair it so well with the tremolo picking of the guitar parts, the strummed sort of chords working with minors and sort of sus triads and stuff like that. Even some of the more low-key parts where we simply have the guitar by itself and it's a bit more sort of like clean or like picked or something like that. Or when we have in Rapist of Minds, we have the solo at the end of it, which I thought was just a nice alternate lead and a bit more of a further exploration of the relevant sort of like scales and modes and key sigs, and also that the sweep picking at the end shows that we can shred on the guitar as well. It's just a really thorough and understandable performance and songwriting process for these 3 tracks. I think there was never a moment where I felt like there were filler in any of these, and I just think there's just a wonderful sense of chemistry between the guitar and drum specifically, but also throughout the rest of the other elements there. There might have been some sort of like strings or sort of like pads or something like that, definitely, bass as well. It was heavy as hell, fantastic to listen to, and again, performance was on point, even with the tempo changes and like the writhing of certain parts of it simply through just have the feeding off of each other. It's very, very good. I think the final comment I'll make, so I usually talk about like 3 things I really appreciate, as well as, again, applicable constructive critique, is the studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering. So I really dig the tone of the albums, these 3 tracks in general. I thought the vocals, guitar, bass, drums, etc., everything else was really well recorded, regardless of whether they were the clean or distorted guitars or the lead guitars. There was just a fantastic sort of like coloration to them without being too much, and it also seemed like you're listening to this in like the middle of winter. It was a very cold, sort of like brittle sounding track at times, but I think that suits the genre. There is a fullness and richness of the tones in other parts there. It's brutally heavy, but it's also fiery and full of force. It sort of overwhelms you at times, and I think part of that is like decisions like the side chaining of the snares on top of the machine gun kicks, the fact that you've got the instruments sort of pan to the side, so the guitar's a double track there, and the music surrounds you in the headphones, so that's just even more full of life and vigor, as well as the drums cymbals being sort of panned at various sort of like stages. And you just get a rich sort of tone from the vocals, despite the style, that resonates in the mix. And you never struggle to sort of follow along with what's going on. It's incredibly endearing in a weird way, because it is like music that might be affronting to some people depending on your familiarity with the style, but I love it. I think it's fantastic, and I've got no complaints about it. Again, it's a fantastic first impression, if I'm not mistaken, to Aegror's work, and I wish him all the best of luck in future with the musical endeavors. I've got no complaints about it, no constructive critique at this point. It's just a really fantastic proof of concept, and I wish them all the best with this album release. But thank you for watching. It was nice and low without pumping as well. The production was tight. There was dynamic range, nice and low without pumping. And there was also some nice sort of fade outs in some of the tracks as well there, where you could kind of hear things sort of like smooth out. There's those little bits of automation and polish that make an album special. But that's effectively my review of these tracks off of the album titled Reign of Disease from Aegror. These 3 tracks being Statesman of the Damned, Rapist and Minds, and Reign of Disease. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via the various social medias and Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.